designed to ruin these moments.
Game's gone. Too soft. Barely touches him.
Which I find quite ironic that Everton are benefiting despite holding up their little flyers saying corrupt.
The fundamental is it's a bloody drawing.
Like a referee consultant, I think that's a pretty ridiculous role. That's creating a role for the sake of a role.
You want the magic of the FA Cup, you want the comeback, you want to laugh at United.
Crazy weekend of football. We had dramas, we had late goals, we had comebacks, but more importantly, there was just 3 letters left in everyone's minds after this weekend: VAR. Today, we are having the serious debate: is VAR ruining the beautiful game, or does it enhance the sport? And we're going to break down every single controversial decision from the weekend. Let's get straight into it. We have to start with what many would regard as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, semi-final in the FA Cup history. Jamie, it directly affected you to some degree, so we'll start with you. Let's talk Man United commentary. I mean, absolute scenes on every possible level. You got United fans booking their tickets, probably got a few Coventry fans leaving at 3-0 up. And in 20 minutes, somehow, some way, they turned it around to 3-3. However, no one's talking about that. Everyone is talking about the 4-3 winner from Coventry in the 120th minute that was ruled offside for literally a centimetre. Where do you stand on this? And do we need VAR for these circumstances?
We were talking about people buying tickets and stuff like that. There was actually United fans who had left the stadium thinking that Coventry had scored that winner and to make it 4-3, funnily enough. However, the problem that I think a lot of people have is it's so close. Because when you look at it on TV, to the naked eye, bias aside, you don't know if that's offside, you don't know if that's onside. It's that close. But it's just funny that football fans are in this way of, if you're a United fan, you're like, well, we play to the letter of the law. He's offside. Per the lines, he's offside. If you're everyone else, you want the magic of the FA Cup. You want the comeback. You want to laugh at United. And you want to see... Well, to be honest, I don't think people actually want to see Coventry in the final for the actual game, because then they'll moan that City have got an easy game. But it's still that sort of funniness of we want to see United cock up a 3-0 lead. That's really the gist of it. However, I don't like agreeing with them, but I think if the lines have drawn you offside, you're offside. I know it's fine margins, but you can't just take that away, and just because it's United. Because if it was the other way around, no one would be complaining. They'd be like, thank God for VAR, they kept Coventry in it. Now, unfortunately, they lost on penalties, but that's a coin flip at the end of the day. And they nearly went through because there was a miss from Casemiro straight away. So they had to do it themselves still. But at the end of the day, when it's offside, you're offside. Unfortunately, if it's a little bit of a toe, it's still offside.
Yeah, that is the cold hard reality of it. I think one of the arguments, and Reece will come to you next, is yes, we want VAR because we want decisions to be correct, but especially in this case, and to be honest, you're spot on about the narrative and the perspective, because if it was the other way around, everyone would be going, oh, brilliant, everyone would be laughing at Man United because they thought they got a winner and didn't, and maybe Coventry would have won because of how psychology works. But when it's this, it probably is genuinely a couple of centimetres. And I think this brings into the debate: is VAR designed to ruin these moments? Like, is this really what we want? Do we want teams scoring last minute winners, everyone going mad, absolute limbs, 80,000 people, and then it being ruined? Because I think that's more the argument. The emotional, the love of the game is the argument.
But that is the reality of it. That's why it's brought in. I remember years ago, you may not remember this, we had a little group chat, and I remember saying it was going to take these little moments out of it. You look throughout the history, I think 2006, 2007, West Ham managed to kick a goal that went over the line against Blackburn, or didn't go over the line against Blackburn. And in effect, that point is what effectively keeps them up, right? I've seen goals that are deflected and go in that shouldn't have stood on a normal day. But it happens. Teams get slices of luck. That element does get taken out of it a little bit. If there was no VAR, that goal would have stood yesterday. Okay. And yes, you can argue that's the magic, but this is what managers and players and pundits have been whinging, and I mean whinging about for years. It's offside. It's still offside. We should be getting the goal, because they can clearly see it where they're standing, obviously. So they're demanding this. Now it's going against them. They don't like it. Utter rubbish. This whole element of, oh, it's a toe now, it should be given. Mark Robbins himself joked if, Haji Wright had cut his toenail, he'd have been onside. First of all, obviously not, because he's still wearing a pair of football boots. Second of all, if that was the other way around, he'd have a completely different opinion. I've seen Coventry get decisions go their way millions of times in the Championship. Hasn't complained once, has he? So, yes, it sucks. From 3-0 down to 3-3 against, let's be honest, the most successful club and the biggest club in this country. It's awful. It's awful they didn't get that moment. But in a way, justice prevails because that was the right decision. A lot of people will complain, right? I mean, the lines were drawn, and because the line was not touching in the case of Wright and Wan-Bissaka, there was doubt to that. So they couldn't give it. They couldn't give it. If there's doubt, you can't give it. Pundits and managers and players say this all the time, and yet again, it goes against them. They don't like it. Unfortunately, whether they like it or not, it's a goal. Like I said, other way round would all be saying something completely different. When it's against our own club, we all say something different. When it goes for our club, we completely agree with it. Offside is offside, because otherwise, if you give that, where do you, no pun intended, draw the line? But his kneecap's offside. Okay, then. Okay, we'll give that. Oh, you might as well then start just moving it back. You have to say offside is offside, and unfortunately, that is the case. People aren't going to like that answer, but always think about, what if that was your club? What if that was happening to you? What if you got a decision like that? It all evens out. Coventry might make the playoffs, because of this. Do you know what I mean? Due to a favour or two that goes their way. So it's unfortunate, but you have to accept it. This is what people wanted, and now you've got it. They don't like it.
I think people also forget that before VAR, there was, if you listen to the sort of show, the radio shows on, people were moaning after the game saying how bad the referees were for decisions that they saw on a replay where it was clearly onside, clearly offside, a definite foul. Okay, it's still happening, but I think there's less risk of it being with offsides, less reason for it being wrong. Okay, you did have the earlier on in the season, the Liverpool Spurs one. That was just a catastrophic error. Let's be honest. They even said while discussing it, that's onside. It should stand, and then they played on. Like, that's not going to happen much. That should be once in a blue moon kind of sort of scenario. You saw it's when I think first got introduced. I think Arsenal. It was Arsenal United, and I think United had a player on by 5 yards. Linesman put his flag up. United went and scored. Then it was like, is it offside? No. And he got the right decision. That's what you got to remember. It's the right decision at the end of the day. And as much as I wanted to play Coventry in the final and laugh at United, if it's offside, it's offside. The lines are the only probably controversial part, because can you draw an exact straight line? Probably not. From other stadiums, so if you forget Wembley should have enough angles to draw a pretty straight line. But I've seen it at Crystal Palace. They struggle there due to the stadium, the way it works, and the way they can try and draw a line. That's when you can probably be more upset if you think it's a millimetre. But you have to just, you have, like Reece said, you have to draw a line somewhere. And that's unfortunately the way it goes. Yeah. Offside is offside.
Yeah, I think that is the right debate to have. And I guess to the sort of upset Coventry fans and upset neutrals, the reality is, and again, make sure you're following us on TikTok, because we have done a video on this. What they have introduced, I believe it's only in the Premier League, not the FA Cup, so maybe irrelevant, but the use of semi-automatic or semi-robotic VAR technology for offsides next season. So again, doesn't help any commentary fans unless you obviously get to the Prem next season. But that should, in theory, in inverted commas, should solve these issues moving forward, because I do still, having viewed the close-ups of the lines yesterday, I'm not, and again, it's not just yesterday's decision. It's there's many for obviously for Chelsea over the years that I remember, but for every club, they've faced these questionable lines where you're looking at it and going, are the lines even right? Because they're using the lines for the basis, and the fundamental is it's a bloody drawing. Like, they're drawing the lines on, so it's fine to say he's offside based on the lines, but if the lines are wrong, the whole system's messed up anyway. But again, bit of a reassurance and maybe a step in the positive direction for next season. It should be automated, and
people still moan. People will
say
moan.
the robots are corrupt.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's not forget, we're still in the early moments, like the early stages of VAR. There's going to be teething problems. You can't get it perfect every single time. The iPhone was not perfect when it first came out, right? It's evolved every single time to get better and better and better and better, supposedly. These things take time. These things have to happen for rules to change, for ideas to change. That's what will happen over time. Things will make a difference. It's unfortunate when it happens to you, but you don't know it's a problem until it actually occurs, right? So that's the whole point of the evolution of this. It will happen, and you'll probably get a couple more in the meantime, but at least something will be done about it, I'm sure, in terms of next season. But they can't just decide to change offside now after this. The same thing, like I said, they've been whinging about for years. They get what they want, and it's still not good enough. Do you know what I mean? It's just getting silly now.
Yeah, and I think the one takeaway from this, as we all know, is football fans are absolutely fickle. We're guilty of it ourselves. Like, even the one in the Chelsea game, I'm obviously screaming corruption. It's a pen, clear handball on Grealish. Jamie probably disagrees, and it's like, if that was the other way around, we'd probably both be saying reverse. So, and it's the same with club managers.
To be fair, I did say it was a penalty. We were next to each other, but we were in a pub. But no, yeah. So that was a penalty. So we might as well move on to that, really, because you got that. You can compare that we can compare that handball to the one that Wan-Bissaka got in the 90 whatever minute for Coventry to equalise. Now, the Grealish one, for me, and Jordan will agree, regardless, the Grealish one is in a much more unnatural position to have his arm to hit it. So, in my opinion, it was Grealish one should have been a penalty. And the Wan-Bissaka one, I don't think it's a penalty. However, when you looked at the penalty we conceded in the final last year, it reminded me of that. So at least they've stayed consistent, really, and given that. But the Grealish one is an error, and I can't defend it. I'd love to be able to defend it, but I can't. And yeah, I think Jordan, you might be more fuming and have a few more words about it. But if I'm giving it a penalty, it's quite hard to see how most people don't.
That's a rare occurrence in itself. So yeah, that says how bad the decision is. But yeah, on that one, I think comparing it to Wan-Bissaka's, obviously Grealish is at least 10 yards away from it, so there's plenty of time to react. The ball's going towards goal, and his hand stopped it. I just can't. Again, we're obviously not the club that's kicking off the most this weekend, and clearly we have other issues with finishing. But I'd love to hear the audio again. Please release the audio on that, and I want to hear. Did they even look at it? Because from my understanding, what I've seen, I believe they asked the ref if he wanted to go to the screen. Don't quote me on that, but they've asked him if he wants to see it again, and he said no. So that is a genuine example.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Because he definitely didn't go to the screen.
No.
It's absolutely baffling.
But the thing is, with the screen one, it's more, if they go to the screen, they normally give the decision.
Yeah.
So it should be more, I think VAR, the people in VAR should be like, this should be handball penalty. Go to the screen, or it's not penalty, play on. So I don't know what actually happened in VAR room, but they got it wrong.
Yeah,
Plain
and
and simple, really.
I do think although it seems to be a bit subjective, but I do think the releasing of this audio should be more commonplace. And to be honest, I don't think it should be on request. I think it should be released for every game, because the officials, the so-called corrupt officials or biased or whatever you want to call them, can't hide then. They know they are being absolutely 100% scrutinised, every word they say. I think they're then more likely to act in a better way and not make these errors.
The only argument I have against that, though, is you don't release the footage of what players say. You got to think there are certain times where the players are out of order in certain aspects and whatnot. They're not under the scrutiny of being recorded for every word they say. And if you want to release the full audio for 90 minutes, someone will be sad and listen to nearly everyone, hear one word, and then he gets possibly even cancelled for even a word that sort of like, I don't know what he's going to say, to be honest, to get him cancelled, but there will be something that just turns into more controversy, and it might not even be about football. And I think they need to be able to. I think they need to be openly having the conversation with each other, being like, I actually don't know. If they actually say that, I don't mind, but you're going to then have people calling them out from the media and stuff like that. It's some fans will go, you know what, him saying I don't know, fine. They've kept the on-field decision is fine, but then you will get pundits going, how can he not know? Does he not know the rules? Does he not know this and all stuff like that? Yeah. I think it's going to cause more problems releasing all of the audio. Maybe you can release it for that specific event. I think every single game and everything like that, I think it's just asking for trouble.
Yeah,
so I wouldn't personally.
You have to be careful, don't you? Because I do agree with. I do think sometimes you should look at releasing it, but I also think if you're going to do that, you should release what players and managers say on the pitch. But they won't want that, so they won't fight for that.
I think that's different, though. I still do think that's different.
That public information should be allowed, especially when you hear some of the things they say, not only to each other but to officials. You know, like I said, managers and players are experts. Obviously, they know every rule, but you know, you do have a risk of causing all pandemonium. I think it's really hard. So again, it's another example they can't win whatever they do, because if he doesn't, I think you should go to the screen, and if you want to keep your decision, keep your decision. I think a lot of things become power struggles. You know, you're listening to three people tell you what the result is. All three might have a different opinion, and you're a bit stuck, but you would see it as, well, they're more senior than me, or looking at this, I'm going to go with what they say, which I completely understand. Why wouldn't you do that? And then you stick to your guns, and you undermine the point in some ways. You don't always, but in some ways you do. It's a real no-win situation.
But I think that's why that what you just said there about the not ganging up on, but the majority. I think we saw that in the Diaz offside, where we got a bit of an insight with that footage as to why when they go to the screen, they always overturn it, because you've got four guys in the headset going, go to the screen, and it's like confirmation bias. If four people are telling you, go to the screen, check your decision, basically when you get to the screen, you see what they're telling you, and then you're just going to overturn it. But again, to go back to the Grealish one, it's like, release the audio. Like, what are you actually saying? Like, what honest ref or official views that, sees it hit his hand, and then goes, we're not even going to look at it? Like, that's why we need the audio released, because I want to understand the logic or the decision-making process. Is it human error and one of them's just gone, nah, all good? And even again, we wouldn't have scored from it, obviously, but you're looking at a handball and then you give a goal kick. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
That was the, like, I know it might be just me, but that was the funny part of it. It's a handball or a corner. That's kind of should be this. It's either or. It's not one. It's not like the corner's not completely out of the question. It shouldn't have never been a goal kick, which I think we all knew before we saw the first replay. You can see the way the ball bounced after and went out. You were like, well, that's a corner. Every player on the pitch turned as if it was a corner, and then it wasn't, and then they looked for handball. That's the sort of, I know they can't overturn all decisions, but that's just a simple one to go. Okay, it hit him, but we're giving a corner. I was wrong on the goal kick. So that's a small thing, but yeah, it was quite comical to see that. I have more from my point of view than yours, George. But
yeah, I'm still fuming now. Let's move on to what many would argue is even the biggest controversy of the weekend, and there's been a lot of sort of aftershock of this and fallout of this, if you like, is the Everton and Forest game. Now, in case you've been living under a rock, Everton won the game 2-0, and obviously it was a so-called 6-pointer in the relegation scrap. And arguably, Forest should have had 3 penalties. Genuinely, we'll get into each of them, but genuinely, you've seen pens given for every single one of these fouls. Now, the controversy from Forest, and this is where it gets really interesting. The Forest tweet has kind of now blurred the lines between social media fans and actual staff, or I don't know what the term you want is, but essentially Forest have accused PGMOL of a biased official. So this has got pretty deep. This is a social media Twitter fan accusation, right? Saying it's corrupt. So this is kind of going into a new dimension of clubs officials. And essentially they said they've warned PGMOL about one of the officials being a Luton fan. Now, where do we stand on this initially before we get into each decision? Because this is quite a rogue accusation from a club.
It's completely unprofessional to do it over social media. It just is. It's someone I think they've tried to be professional in the way they've written it, but have said it as the anger's going through them that they've just lost what can be known as the corrupt derby, really, this season, with points deductions. They both teams think they've got corruption against them, which I find quite ironic that Everton are benefiting despite holding up their little flyers saying corrupt FC. But it's just unprofessional. I think Forest have come out and said that they didn't request the VAR person to be taken out of to be not included before the game, but still, why is a Luton fan involved in stuff? They've all got to do their job, and if you don't think they're going to do a professional job, you should raise that before the game. But if they're telling you no, I don't think there's much you can stand on. You can't act like a fan who's calling up a radio station and acting like that.
Yeah, so before we get into the decisions in this game, I think we need to really ask, first of all, why do Nottingham Forest have Clattenburg as their like a referee consultant? I think that's a pretty ridiculous role. That's creating a role for the sake of a role. What really can he do? He can only tell you if decisions are right or wrong. If Forest want that, they might as well just watch the punditry after the game. He can't change anything after a game, so I don't get what he's there for. However, I get why clubs are trying to do this sort of thing. Very unprofessional, like Jamie said, for Nottingham Forest. They should have handled this better. They shouldn't have even posted about it. Just leave it. Talk privately after the game. But they've gone out there and they've lost credibility now. Who's really going to take them seriously, and any decision that goes against them or for them, people are just going to wind it up. I understand it. The Premier League is a high stakes game. They go down, they lose a lot of money. And with their points deduction as it is, finances will no doubt have to be tighter in the Championship. It's a high stakes game, but this is the point of the game. They're in it to make money. So that's what you're in it for. This is what the people wanted when the Premier League created all this money, and they're getting it. But unfortunately, someone has to go down. Do I think those rules will change in years to come? Yes, they will. But at the moment, it is what it is. I'd be more questioning why my team haven't been good enough all season, despite the investment I've put in. Because he's put his money where his mouth is. He's put the money in, and they've not delivered. They should be doing better. they should be doing better, even with a defensive kind of coach. They seem to be shipping more goals than before. So they can't look at this one game as what unravels their season. It does play an impact. Again, what we'll discuss in a minute, but realistically, they haven't been good enough so far. They're still staying up as it stands, but they can't just blame this. You can't always blame everything on one game. You have to look at throughout the season and sometimes accept that you're not good enough. But as it stands, they are good enough because they're not in the relegation zone.
Yeah, and I think one point. I mean, again, there's a lot of different arguments here and a lot of different perspectives. I think one point that is pretty essential to at least their sort of Luton fan accusations. Looking at the league table, if you're a Luton fan and you wanted to manipulate this result, I'd argue you want to draw. Like, are we missing the point here completely? Like,
No, because Forest
surely-
are 3 points off Luton. So if you give them a point, that means Luton have got to get a win and like 2 wins. It's like one result.
Yeah.
One result could put them there, or two results. So I think it does make sense if you are in this corruption sort of conspiracy. You do want Forest to lose. I think you just let one club go away and you catch one club up. That's how I kind of would see it. Because I think if you're trying to catch both, you're risking it too much, giving them a point.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And again, if we have got Forest fans here, if we have got Luton fans here, let us know. What would you have preferred? Now let's actually get into the decisions, because again, we've touched on Clattenburg. As I think we're all in agreement, the Clattenburg appointment is a bit weird. Again, as Rhys said, it's probably more of a sort of psychological tactic, maybe to put a bit of pressure on the refs, or get one of your old boys in the booth, and maybe there's a bit of favouritism. Clearly now with Clattenburg coming out, basically potentially hitting and he agrees, I'd say. I mean, that's kind of been Clattenburg's response. He's certainly not shut down Forest accusations, which to me implies that he might actually agree. And if you've got someone who's a former ref accusing potential corruption, we got a bigger, a real issue on our hands here. But let's get into these 3 decisions, because everything aside we've just said about you've got to do the job, the team needs to perform better. I do think these decisions are pretty shocking. So the first one, forgive me, Everton fans, Forest fans, if I'm getting this in the wrong order. The first one, I believe, is the foul on Rayner. For me, there's enough contact. He doesn't win the ball and he touches the player. So for me, I'd say a pen on that one. Where do you guys stand on the first one?
Yeah, penalty. He's gone through the player, and the way the ball's bobbled up is like. So I understand why the ref didn't give it, because the way that the ball's gone up is like Young has won the ball. But the replay clearly shows he didn't win the ball. He's gone through Rayner's foot. So it's a penalty for me. I think this is the most clear one out of the 3 for the penalties.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give you a long-winded answer here. I think they are unlucky to probably not get one. 3 penalty shouts in a game and you don't get one, that is very rare, whether it's the right decision or not. I don't think the decisions are as clear day as everybody seems to make out. There was something a few weeks ago we saw, I can't remember what game it was, but it was a penalty decision similar to this, and we're all moaning that the game's gone. Game's gone, too soft, barely touches him. Now we're all saying it's so blatant, it's wrong. So again, this is where you just can't win whatever you do, right? I think this game is an example of where the rules have become so hard and complicated. Not just because the FA have introduced them, managers, players all wanted it as well. Analysing them becomes very hard, because you've got to work out every decision. At the end of the day, human interpretation comes into it. I don't think it's that much of a penalty. I think we always go, if there's contact, it's a foul, and then like I said, we moan the game's gone soft. He did chuck himself to the floor a little bit. It's not the worst decision I've ever seen. It's really not. Like, is he unlucky? Potentially. Do the rules say he should have a penalty? I think there's probably blurred lines there. I think it depends on the day. If he'd have got it, we'd have probably moaned that he got it. So I think it's a little bit harsh. Not harsh, unlucky. Again, like I said, all three are unlucky, but I'm not too shocked he didn't get that.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. So a little bit of disagreement at least. Let's move on. I believe again the second incident was the alleged handball. And just by the way, despite what FPL points will tell you, Ashley Young has dropped a 0 out of 10 because he is literally there was many fouls he made before these incidents, and he's potentially given away 3 penalties in one match. So if there's any corruption, it's the Ashley Young fan club in the booth because that is ridiculous that he's got away with this. Literally got away with murder. So yeah, the second one I believe is the alleged handball. Very, very similar to the Wan-Bissaka one. Almost identical, I'd argue. One's given, one's not. For me, I'm genuinely torn on this one. I'm more of the opinion if the ref gives it, it's a pen. If the ref doesn't give it, it's not a pen. Where do you guys stand on the second one?
So this is the problem I have. I don't think it's a handball. I think it's look. I understand. Like if it's happening to City, I'm going to appeal for it. I'm definitely going to appeal for it. I'm not gonna lie on that. Like I will show my bias in it, kind of thing. But I didn't think the Wan-Bissaka one was a pen. But like I said, I thought they had the consistency of doing what they did in the final last year. Gave a penalty for something similar. They should. It's the consistency is my problem. I'm fine if none of them 3 ones I spoke about were given, but 2 of them were, and this one wasn't. That's the problem I have. So that's where I think it is a penalty. But in my opinion, none of them were. The handball sort of was. So yeah, so I'm a bit like torn as well, like you said, George.
Yeah, I think I get what you mean. I think this is again where the rules have been made too complicated. We all moan handball is handball, and then we say actually we need to give some sympathy and leniency. This definitely could have gone either way, in my opinion. I personally, if I was refereeing that game, I would have given it. I would have gone to the screen and given that, just from what I've seen over the course of the season, last couple of seasons. Ashley Young is probably very lucky, and you're right. He dropped an absolute stinker yesterday. I think him getting 0 on FPL is probably the best thing that happened to him yesterday. I think I would have given it, but I understand when it's 50-50, you can't give it in favour. Because there's that element of doubt still. So yeah, I see where Jamie's coming from now. I personally would give it, but I understand why it's not been given. It is insanely close. It is insanely close. And he hasn't covered himself in glory. But I also argue, what could he do? You know, I'm in that camp a little bit.
Okay. And last but not least, the contact on Hudson-Odoi, I believe. For me, I'd say this was the most obvious because for me, there's clear contact in the back and there's enough, in my opinion, to send him down. Whereas maybe with the Rayner one, there's not enough contact to really send him down. So for me, I think this is probably a stonewall. And I think they've been done on that one.
Well, yeah, it's quite like you were saying about Ashley Young. It's quite funny that he's the one involved for all 3. To nearly give away 3 penalties on a single day, it would be one for the record books, I reckon. I don't think there is a player who's done that in the Premier League, at least. I think this is a penalty again. If you're going to do these tackles, you've got to win the ball and not go through the man. And he's gone through the man again. It's another penalty. Everton. I think this was this at 1. I think this was at 1-0 as well. So it did matter the timing of it. So lucky, very lucky, and that's all I can really say on the decision. It's not corruption before people get involved with that. It just isn't. It's just unlucky, really. Poor decision by the refs, but unlucky.
Yeah, I think this is where the referee should have gone to the screen on this one, because it's from where the referee would be standing. That's a very hard one to try and get in real time. And I think not giving it gives you that opportunity to go to the screen or whatever. When you do see it again, he doesn't win the ball. So it is a foul, it is a penalty. And again, Young is very, very lucky to have had that go his way, and Forest are unlucky. I would argue this is a decision that, where they should have gone to the screen and really checked that, because I think that would have been given as a penalty. Like I said, for the referee to see it in real time is very, very hard. So you can't have a go at him for that. I think going to the screen was the biggest mistake. Not going to the screen was the biggest mistake, rather. And I think he should have just done it just to play it safe. I have no problem with him sticking to his guns. If he honestly believes he got the ball and that, then fine. No problem with that. Do it more. Stick to your guns. But I also think, you know what? You're not going to lose anything if you go to that. So
No, you're absolutely right. And look, I guess before we wrap up, we've obviously debated VAR a lot in general and some of its use. Let's have a quick conclusion of where we currently each stand on VAR. I'll keep it short and sweet. I think overall it is still a benefit of the game, and although it is ruining moments like yesterday, I think you've got to look at the numbers at the end of the day, and it is still improving the percentage of decisions that are correct, and therefore in theory equaling out that luck equation. There's definitely a lot to improve, and hopefully we'll see that continuous evolution. But overall, I'm still a fan of VAR, despite the BS that has occurred this weekend.
I think VAR's never actually the problem. People say it's VAR, it's not. It's the referees getting the decisions right, and that's where I think the problem lies. So I'm a full advocate for VAR. I think it should stay. The officiating has got to get better. There are just simple decisions that are wrong now, and not all of them are VAR related. But I also think the rules need to be a bit clearer. They can make them a bit simpler. They'll fix a lot of these problems. So that's kind of how I stand. VAR in, as people might disagree.
yeah, I mean, I know I said years ago I didn't agree with the concept of VAR, but I do agree with it. I do think it's making decisions fair. I believe it's around 96% are correct. So I suppose maybe after the weekend it drops a little bit, but it's still 96%. It's not perfect. It can't be perfect because human interpretation will always come down to it. How many times have we seen it? Look at that game, but it's a toe now, but it's still offside. Just goes to show how they will never win whatever we do. It will improve. It will get better. People will invest more. I think everything around needs to change. I think players and managers and pundits should take a good hard look at themselves for the way they behave. They're making it too complicated. They want all these things. Starts to go against them. They don't like it. That needs to change. And I do think referees also need to have that final say themselves. They shouldn't feel if they don't want to listen to the three in the, in the VAR room, then they don't have to. But a lot of things happen in real time. It's a high pressure game. You moan it's too long. You moan it's not long enough. It's let them make their decision. Your one decision doesn't unravel your whole season. And I'll point this out. Arsenal got a decision on that, whether it went over the line or not at Newcastle. A few weeks later, Odegaard gets away with a blatant handball. So it goes to show it evens it out, right? So just get on with it. If it continues after a couple of years, then we can bring it up again and say, look, it's just not working. But everyone's very quick to blame the referees, just like we're quick to blame other people, people in positions of power for anything else. It's never our fault, even though, you have 90 minutes to put the ball in the back of the net. Do you know what I mean? Even though you spent £200 million on players who can't deliver. Everybody needs to look at themselves. It's a monster football's created in the clubs, and I think the organisations have themselves to blame for this being what it is. It's all been made hard work when it doesn't need to be.
Well, there you have it. What a note to end on. As always, appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you put your comments below. We want to hear from you. We've had our say, many disagreements. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.